So I was reading what you wrote about Drake and the open source robotics toolbox. So first of all, thanks for sharing that. And I just want to mention something because I think when I was reading, everything was very honest about the challenges we have for open source tools. And since 2 years, I was working on in material and soft robotics. This material has very young modulus, and it was really hard even to capture its dynamics. And this, you speak in this about the tool that the most important thing is a physics engine. And that's something we struggle with in the community. I don't know. Of course, it depends what kind of properties or what kind of system we want to simulate. But when I was reading about what you try to stress about, it's very interesting. Even this comment I would like to mention here, you said that some people would say that the problem we are tackling in robotics are too complex to be treated with clean mathematics. And you said that you strongly disagree. And I find this really, reflecting a lot of things about how we design the physics engine simulator and what kind of intricacies we have that we can't really capture what we want exactly. If you can tell us more about that.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. I think that because of the success of deep learning, I think people are often quickly saying that we don't want to use physics-based solutions anymore. We want to use data-driven solutions. I think there are places where our physics-based solutions are so good that I wouldn't see abandoning them very quickly. I think there are problems where our physics-based solutions haven't done haven't given performant solutions, and I'm totally fine replacing them with data. If I wanted to pour liquid into then I think actually that one's on the bubble for me. I think Flex is a fantastic physics-based sort of simulator for something like that. Soft robotics I think is this intermediate regime where I think there are some aspects of soft that might be efficiently captured with data. But I still really believe that there's a lot more to be gained from physics-based understanding. Now, I think so. The soft simulation we do in Drake, we actually have a new team on the dynamics team working specifically on soft simulation. So you should expect more to come. But the stuff that's in there right now that I talked about in that blog post is think of it as a hard endoskeleton with soft skin. So it's relatively low deformation mode. We think of them as rigid bodies that have. We think about the rich contact of those rigid bodies in a low deformation mode. So where a lot of simulators will replace the contact between two rigid bodies with a point or a handful of points and summarize the force there, we will go do the extra work to compute a surface integral over a contact patch. And we find that leads to much more robust simulation around some of the corner cases in even rigid on rigid contact, and it's on this. I think it's a nice trade-off between computationally more expensive solutions and something that's performant but robust, seems to reproduce the real world experiments very nicely. So that's work called the hydroelastic simulation that's been done by Michael Sherman and his team.
Mm-hmm. So for closing sim to real, I think that's something also interesting because you mentioned that there would be a large also deformation for soft robotics. So I don't know, how do you see that kind of a challenge here? Because it's very hard sometimes to do large deformation.
Right. I think from the simulation perspective, there's a couple tiers of extra complexity. So we are working on large deformation soft simulation now, but even then, I would say we're trying to avoid the hardest problems in very thin filament kind of simulation. Still, that'll be like for cloth. We won't do cloth in this round yet. That'll be yet another stage of evolution. So there are really hard. I mean, just the fundamental problem with when the simulation is of a very thin material is that you suddenly, if you have any penetration whatsoever, you can have a puncture, and suddenly your contact forces might be coming out the other side of the material, and that gets very hard, and it requires a lot of numerical precision to do that well. So no, but I do think we'll have some very good for non-thin material soft simulation coming very soon.